and the Fabian Society. Holdren.
And by the way, this is not Joseph McCarthy up here.
Yeah.
This isn't Alex Jones or Alan Watt. Alan, because I read all the same books, he's reading books written by Gorbachev, written by H.G. Wells, written by Leon Trotsky, written by Joseph Stalin, by Vladimir Lenin. We're telling you what they said, and now their world government's here. By the way, Fox News is playing the 10 biggest stories of 2009. One of them is how the Japanese government wants to put lithium, an antipsychotic, in the water supply. Let me give you a news flash. Most U.S. municipal supplies already have lithium added. You can go over the toxicology reports for your city's water. You'll find it's not leaching in, they're adding it. The national media calls me all the time, Alan Watt, and they say, you're crazy. You're saying they're putting cancer viruses in vaccines. You say they're drugging the water. And then I start emailing them mainstream articles, and they shut up real fast. They always think they've gotten me. Then I'll be talking to some yuppie producer, and I'll say, don't you care about your kids? And they'll start really realizing for their petty power position of lying that they're really assaulting their own children. But they still just giggle and go on with it. Briefly, from your research, cancer viruses in vaccines and calmative toxins in the water.
Very, very old techniques. They started off with fluoride, of course. In the early days, they knew about this stuff at the beginning of the 1900s. And what it did with people, it made them more pliable and more easily managed. But it was Japan, too, where they first noticed that a particular village in Japan many years ago were much more placid than the average villager. And they realized when they tested the water, there was natural lithium in it. So that's where the idea sprung from. If we add this to other people's supplies, it'll make them more docile and easily managed. They won't care much what's happening in the big world or what's going to coming down in the future. And that's why they're adding it across the world. We've got to understand and go back to Julian Huxley. Julian Huxley, the brother of Aldous Huxley, his grandfather was Sir Thomas Huxley, the best friend of Charles Darwin. And Darwinism is a big part of this whole socialist agenda. It gave them ammunition for their purpose and for their planning for the future based on superior types, inferior types, and so on. And so Julian Huxley talked about the coming system of control, where they would definitely use pharmacology and they'd use hypnosis, techniques of persuasion on television and so on. That's what they would use for the public, and it's been very successful already. Never mind all the stuff that's naturally prescribed by the physicians in the tranquilizing business. They also put it into the water. And you've got to go into the writings, too, of another hardline communist, by the way, who worked for MI5, like most of them did. and that was Arthur Koestler. That's declassified. He was an agent for them. And he worked with the United Nations during the 60s on projects to find ways of lobotomizing the human brain chemically or through viral or bacterial means. They discussed the means of directing biowarfare techniques right to the brain itself by injections. He said we can do it through the food, we could do it through the water supply. The only problem was how to actually introduce it. And of course the public weren't to know. And the UN had different teams all working on the same project. Millions of dollars went into the investigations. Russia went to the straightforward way of mandatorily lobotomizing people physically. The criminal element, those who spoke out with wrong-think or had inflexibility of opinion, that was a psychiatric disorder, they would lobotomize them. But they found that they could do it by inoculations, where they could carry something right to the brain, fever develops in the baby, and they're short a few cents off the dollar from then on. That's all been done, I think, to be honest with you.
Which is good. I mean, you then get a partially lobotomized biological robot that you can then program, because programming doesn't work if it isn't started early and if the person has an advanced intellect that will then later in life discover the programming. It'll then be hard to get rid of all of it, but then stronger-willed people who are also intelligent can countermand the programming. But for a lot of people who were already just going to be average intelligence, they're now borderline retarded, and that's why you can't reach out to them.
And officially, the United Nations has lowered the official average IQ by about 4 or 5 points in the last 4 years.
Yeah, pretty soon geniuses will be able to tie their shoelaces.
That's correct. That's correct, yeah.
And they giggle and laugh about this, and their argument is, hey, look, the public doesn't care we're brain damaging them. They deserve to be brain damaged further.
Mm-hmm. And now we have the mass campaigns now with the fake flu pandemics and so on to terrify the public into compliance, to get the latest upgraded biowarfare technique to lobotomize them. And it's all part of the same system. They can't ask for volunteers.
Alan Watts, stay there. I want to get into the flu, your take on that, then Copenhagen, and then some phone calls. And we'll play that clip from Fox News about drugging your water. It's the newest, coolest thing. Of course, they've already been doing it. Yeah, here's Fox News. And I've seen MSNBC, the clips on YouTube, where they propose putting Prozac in the water. And the federal government's also proposing putting statins in the water. They're now teaching kids that 5-year-olds need anti-cholesterol drugs, which completely eat your liver. It just doesn't even help you with cholesterol. It's all lies. Now, over 150 chemicals on average are put in U.S. drinking water. Same thing in Canada, the UK. Some have over 300. And it's lithium. Everything. Of course, lithium's a heavy metal. Very toxic. It's the same thing with fluoride. Sodium fluoride. But when you hear fluoride, that's a catch-all term under federal regulations for over 300 chemicals they're allowed to put in. And, I mean, mercury, everything, they are killing you. Okay, that's why people look so bad, even if they exercise and try to eat healthy. These are sickos, okay? They openly write textbooks how they want to kill us. We're going to talk to Alan Watt about that in a moment. A real expert on this stuff and a big part of Fall of the Republic. So what they do is they pitch it to you as a great thing. It's already being done. Lithium's already put in your water. Okay, let me give everybody the news flash. You can pull up an EPA report for any major city. And sure, they can say small towns have natural trace amounts. Some towns have natural trace amounts of mercury or arsenic or cyanide. Doesn't mean you want to go drink it. Alan Watt, they're really getting us ready for this because they know we're exposing that they're already putting it in the water. So they're going, yeah, we're chemtrailing you. John P. Holdren this year admitted it. And yeah, we're putting stuff in your water. What's wrong with that?
We have to go back again quite some time to realize that this is nothing new about the idea. The big boys had global meetings back in the 30s even, 40s, 50s, always looking towards this future world society they were going to bring into being. And they talked, as I say, about ways of doing it, and pharma was to be a big part of it. There's no doubt about that. They all thought about using pharma. And you find with Zbigniew Brzezinski, who pretty well says he's got his own man and as the president now because he trained him, in his book, Between Two Ages, that he published back in the 1970s, he talked about mind control. He talked about the technotronic era, but he talked about other methods too where the public would be basically made docile. He said it can be done electronically by using standing waves across a whole continent if need be, which means it was already tested out back in the 70s. So it works. But they also mentioned other methods as well.
And then I saw a Baltimore Sun article about 8 years ago where it said, DARPA in major cities is testing calming waves.
That's right.
To make everyone happy. What's wrong with calming waves, Alan? Mm-hmm. Why are you and I different? Why don't we love the government putting a toxic heavy metal in the water to brain damage us? Why don't we like mind control towers? Why don't we like police in black uniforms and secret arrest and torture? What's wrong with us, Alan Watt?
I think there's something wrong with the uptake in our brains for these particular chemicals, perhaps waylaid somewhere else, which actually does happen in some people's physiologies. It's the same with inoculations. They found with the standard childhood inoculations, the doctors are all trained to tell the mother, don't worry, they go home, have a fever, it's based in the head. Well, when you have an inflammation in the head, you have an inflammation in the brain. Inflammation causes brain cells to die off. So this is all supposedly normal. And
don't worry, we just brain damage your child and lower their IQ by 3 points.
Exactly.
And after 50 shots, they're going to be retarded. Don't worry, I've got power. I wear a white lab coat. Oh, I love my mistress. Oh, go ahead.
And then some people, there's always a few individuals where, because these particular biowarfare chemicals will attach themselves to uptake amino acids to go to the brain, because of different physiology, sometimes it's waylaid somewhere else, into the intestine, into other parts of the body. They'll end up with various allergies. It's a very common
take
symptom.
The movie Serenity, based on the TV. Well, I mean, you may have seen it, but for those that don't know, they go to this planet where everybody's died to find out, and they discover the government was putting basically Prozac into the air, but they found that 1% of people, it makes them psycho killers. So that's the establishment kind of saying what we're doing is having some unintended consequences. Go ahead.